Welcome back to another episode of Talking Transformation, the Appledore podcast. I am here today with Francis Haysom, my colleague, principal analyst here at Appledore. Francis heads up our network data management, observability, inventory, a whole range of other research programs. Extremely experienced in the industry. Francis, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. I obviously didn't make a bad job last time. So.
We're still here. We're still here. I know you've been on your travels recently. I understand you've been to Paris. Maybe before we get into this main topic today, give us a flavor of what that event was like in Paris this week.
So, yeah, I've been to Network X in Paris. This is an event which is it's a new event for Appledore, but it's definitely an event that should be in our wheelhouse, as it were. Very different focus to a lot of the other events. We tend to go to events that have quite a mobile focus. This is very much a fixed IP core, a lot of Wi-Fi, but not a lot of mobile technology there. So seeing a subtly different perspective on the telecoms environment is always very, very useful, and also very different parts of organizations that we know and love. For example, like Sienna and Nokia, for example, seeing very different perspective on their product portfolios.
Yeah, interesting. Roughly, how many people would you say attended that? Do you know what the numbers were this year?
I don't actually know the numbers. There seemed to be a lot of there was definitely lots of action on the show floor. Lots of people there. Lots of operators there, with large presence from the operators. We did get some sense from a number of the vendors that they were seeing a slight decline in the size of the event, and it's noticeable that next year's event actually is moving to Vienna, with a view to engaging more with Eastern European operators, and maybe it's some sense of that's where the new action is going on there. But from my point of view, it was very much a successful event, and there was enough people walking around the halls and attending.
Okay, good conversations then.
Yes, absolutely. And then, as with all these events, there's always it's the serendipity, the walk bys that often can be the highlight of the show. We talked with a vendor that we hadn't really had a lot of engagement with before, Rad, who and it was just really interesting to see. There's a lot of people talking about doing AI. They were actually implementing AI in terms of the way that they were managing their packet routers, for example. So it was just good to pick up some actual, people really doing AI rather than talking about it.
Sure. Yeah, it's obviously it's topics dominating conversation right now. Something I wanted to focus our discussion on today, though, is something that I know we've been picking up on in the last 18 months or so, a topic close to your heart, which is the whole area of digital twins. I know it's something you've just published a couple of new reports on, but just bring us up to speed on where is the industry on digital twin? New thing, old thing? What's going on here?
It's definitely a very old thing. And actually, one of the challenges of digital twin is if you've really put your mind to it, almost everything becomes a digital twin. In terms of whether that's a root cause analysis system or inventory, for example, they all have elements of digital twin about it. And digital twin as a concept is really not a new idea in telco. If you go back to the ancient days of phone systems, Erlang modeling of sort of sizing networks is a digital twin at the end of the day. I think the thing that has changed, there was a lot of interest just around COVID, just pre-COVID, in terms of digital twins being the thing. I think largely driven by seeing other industries like, for example, aero engines adopt digital twins and see quite transformational aspects to the business. Since COVID, I think we've seen a sort of dip in that one. And I don't think there's any surprise. in about the last 12, 18 months, we've seen a pickup in digital twin, and that is driven by, the subject of the moment, AI, and increasingly agentic AI decision making. And where digital twins fit in that is really, how do we make better decisions? How do we, a digital twin at the end of the day, I think is most easily seen as it's a system that supports better decision making. How by modeling a network, for example, can you make better decisions? How by combining aspects of what you are doing in a network can I make better decisions? Can I make better decisions if my my assurance processes are better aware of planning processes, for example, or capacity, and vice versa? Can my procurement, my supply chain be better because I have a better view of the actual utilization of the components that I'm putting into the network? All aspects of things that digital twins can help with. And importantly, the other thing I think that is leading digital twins is this whole idea of agentic AI. If at the moment I've got humans can kind of put human intuition into a process, or to some extent I can ring up the planning guy at the moment. If you want to make that process agentic, you can no longer rely on that one. So digital twins have an important role in bringing components which may already be digital twins, but bringing them together.
Yeah. So, is it the case that the meaning of digital twins itself is kind of evolving? I mean, when this first kind of was coming up in wider consciousness, it was in the context of Industry 4.0, and people were thinking about complex machinery or factories and that kind of environment. I mean, that's been with us for probably 10 years, give or take, maybe longer, I'm sure. But has our interpretation of that in telecom evolved? I mean, just to take a simple example, is it right or wrong to equate, let's say, your classic inventory system? Is that a digital twin by definition, or is that just one kind of a digital twin? Or how do we understand the variety of digital twins that exist today and the purposes that they might be used for?
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there. Because the problem is digital twin is such a wide term. It can mean literally tracking your part from design all the way to its installation, and that's where industries like aero engines, Rolls-Royce, for example, have really transformed their business by being able to see the whole life cycle of the parts in the jet engine. They have been able to transform their business from one of selling jet engines to selling flying hours, for example. And telco is, I think, in the same thing. We model different things, we're using different things, but fundamentally, it is one of, we now have the opportunity, like Rolls-Royce, to join up the digital twins that we already have today, and to be able to leverage what is a fundamental shift, which is the ubiquitous of cloud scaling, whether it be compute or data storage, to be able to bring twins that you would never have contemplated bringing together, or that data together. And this isn't, and I think it's an important thing. This isn't just another attempt at a data lake or a data warehouse, for example. The critical thing about digital twins, in our mind, is that it's one that has meaning. It has understanding and knowledge. It has the ontology, the understand, and really ontology is a hard word for what is understanding what the data means, understanding how it fits together. Because I understand how that data fits together, I can bring together processes that may or may not have been separated before. The other aspect, I think, particularly within telco, is just the sheer amount of data that is now available to us, whether it's from existing telemetry systems. At the show, we were meeting up with Ookla, for example, and timing is everything. On our journey to Paris, the whole of the Vodafone network went down, which meant that I was unable to communicate with my colleague while we were going through check-in. Huge implications for almost everybody that was on a Eurostar going into Paris. the really important thing is there's huge amounts of information. There's customer information, and nuclear is tracking it in terms of down detector and in terms of sentiment in the network. How can we bring that digital twin of a telephony network, and how can we bring that together with the assurance system? How can we bring that together with the core of the network? We now have the tools that allow us to actually bring those things together, whereas say 20 years ago they had to necessarily remain separate because we just didn't have that scale to deliver it, or we could do something about it in 2 weeks later by putting all this stuff in a data warehouse and trying to do clever things. We've now got the opportunity to do that almost in near real time, bring those and bring better insights from it.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm hearing a lot of recently. The whole degree to which real time has become a key driver, the availability of information and then bringing it to where you need and making it a rich context for decisions that are being made. Let me ask you one other question about digital twins, because I'm also hearing two slightly different interpretations of the term. Interested to get your take. One is the idea of a digital twin almost as a kind of wrapper around the network through which all changes must be conducted. In other words, digital twin becomes that sandbox, that air gap, if you like, to make sure that before you make any network change, it's validated in a digital twin. That's one application of a digital twin. Whether that's viable or not, interested in your views. The second one is it's kind of the reverse of that, which is a digital twin as a kind of temporarily instantiated version of a network or part of a network on which you will conduct various operations for simulation, experimentation, so on. But then, in principle, you'll tear that down again and reinstate it when you need it. So I want to contrast between these two different views of digital twin: the sort of permanent one and the, if you like, the ephemeral one, which is kind of made with one. Are those compatible? Are they the same thing, or are they just, or are they quite kind of different in nature, in your view?
From a fundamental sort of technology building block point of view, what you've got is they're both built using the same tools. I think the critical difference between the two is actually one of life cycle. Fundamentally, one is and we can get on a little bit. If you track the natural life cycle, and some of our key vendors like Sierra Blue Planet are looking at this, is this tracking, it's being able to see the context of everything through a life cycle. So when you talk about the idea of exploratory information, that tends to be something that we would be doing at a stage of planning or capacity management or what if scenarios or all the rest of it. The decisions we make there may then feed into what happens on a more sort of what happened, which is more. Traditionally, we would think of that as an assurance thing. What happened? Why did it happen? And as you talk about, there's the kind of there's the kind of the classic fulfillment provisioning aspects of things that you will use a digital twin to be the kind of air gap between this is what I want to do. This is what I want to make sure is a repeatable exercise. I want to do some validation before I then go and implement it on the network. I also want that digital twin to act as a means of rollback, that I can roll back the system. So actually, the Vodafone example is a good example. Nobody's quite said what's happened, but there's a good indication it's probably something like a BGP router. Misconfiguration or something, or a piece of software that's got delivered into the core network, because fundamentally it brought down not just mobile network, it brought down the fixed network. That aspect, at the moment we're still somewhat making operational decisions which are we don't have that rollback scenario. We don't have that air gap of testing and validating that we're doing the right thing. It's still held in people's heads, people's informal operational processes. So digital twins have they all then they're all based on the same components, but they act very differently depending on where we are in that life cycle.
Okay, interesting. I think that Vodafone example will probably be quite instructive, for the wider industry, kind of going forward in terms of understanding, what new technologies were, new technology coming at us left, right, and center at the moment, but what new technologies or concepts or ideas, might improve resilience of networks of all kinds in the future, and maybe digital twin will be
An
part.
important thing to say about the voter thing, it looks like it was not a malicious act. But last week, for example, I was on a call with Nokia and their threat report in terms of CSP. All of the characteristics of malicious intent on network, a lot of it is actually to do with 60% is to do with operational
Sure,
context.
sure.
It's to do with people in creating backdoors and operational processes. So again, this sort of operationalizing, air gapping the way, using digital twins to test out that way, or to sort of abstract away that direct interaction with the network. Maybe it, and I stress maybe an aspect of actually not just avoiding mistakes, but actually avoiding malicious intent.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably things do happen on networks, and we learn from them every time as an industry. So we're constantly on the lookout for ways to improve resilience, improve security on networks, and make sure that they're, doing the job that they need to do. This is a life and death industry. We don't often talk about it, but that's the reality. There's been some instance in Australia recently regarding another operator, again, scrutiny on how that works, how to make these networks that are so critical resilient, and we can bring new technology to apply to those as well. Um, Francis, I know you've done two reports on digital twin so far. I think there's a primer report, and then just to set the basics, and then a report on building better digital twins. Some
Yeah.
interesting ideas in that. I know people should take a look at that. What's next in the pipeline for you on research on digital twins?
So the next phase is really looking at, as I say, the subject of the moment, agentic AI. What is the role of digital twins in agentic AI, and not just simple. We've talked about this life cycle, the very different types of digital twins and different agentic decision making as you go through that life cycle and how are you better able to support root cause analysis. Importantly, how are you able to, as an industry, we tend to look for a kind of that machines need to make perfect decisions before we'll trust them. We are human beings. We can take the Vodafone as an example. We can we assume humans are 100% reliable until otherwise determined. There's a lot of problems out there of agents and also multi-agents, whether they're human or machines, where there's conflict and there is cooperation, or where there is no perfect answer. How do I balance energy consumption against quality of experience? There are some aspects where it's not an on-off switch. It will depend a lot of to do with the context of where I am, the actual benefit delivered by higher energy and higher QoE. That will all change. Digital twins can allow us to make those types of decisions. Digital twins can support agent conflict. This will this is my intent. This is my intent. At the moment, all the demonstrations I'm seeing of multi intent conflict is very much a kind of this one is always right and this one is always wrong. It's a rules based approach.
Yeah.
Digital twins give you a much more nuanced way of actually both having digital twins supporting each agent, but also combined digital twins supporting that conflict, that conflict resolution between agents. So the
Okay.
next is very much looking at the whole aspects of that, and that's just one example of where I see agentic AI requiring digital twins.
Okay. It looks like a subject we're going to be doing a lot more on over the next year or so. So yeah, we look forward to more research coming out on that. Excellent. Okay, Francis, that's been very interesting. I hope people will take a look at the research. It's a very important topic, and yeah, we'll be talking transformation again very, very soon. Thanks.
Thank you.